This is the face of a madman, and that's why I'm going to say this right up front. If you want a serious review this time, it won't happen. You will get all the information, but not in the same way as usually, because I snapped already like 10 failed attempts ago when I still said I will try to make it serious, but once I slip, I will go into full loco mode. That mode is going full on. So let's just enjoy this video, because I'm not the one to blame for it. It is this phone. This might actually be the very first phone where I have to admit defeat to, because I'm still struggling until now, and that makes it so hard to get through the review to decide on what I should actually think of it. Because on one side it's at least good, sometimes decent, but on the other side it's just a little bit weird, and I just can't properly wholeheartedly recommend it. Later on in the conclusion I might make even less sense, because I will go back and forth throughout all the pros and cons, but at least in the detailed part I will try to do my best to get through the rest. Okay, let's start off with the design and build. Build is actually something that I really like, because you really have to heavily bend it to get it to creak at least a little bit. Also, very solid back, a little bit on the slippery side though. The sides are nicely curved off, the front is flat, but there is a nice transition towards the sides. And overall it feels very comfortable in the hand, but what it does not is be very compact in the hand with those huge bezels. So definitely a little bit more on the bulky side. One-hand usability will be quite hard. On the back we have the camera slightly protruding, along with the flash and the microphone, headphone jack on the top. On the left side we have the SD card and SIM card tray, USB Type-C, my speaker and the microphone. The buttons, maybe not so much of an audible feedback, but a nice tactile feedback and a good position with a notification LED and with a fingerprint reader that has some extra functionality, because unfortunately we don't have capacitive buttons since we are already using this space, but we have on-screen navigation button. But we have some extra functionality, because a long press gets you to home and the tap is just to get back. In case you wonder about the red color, I actually like it, but there is also a black version, so don't worry too much. Now, what is there to say about the display? One thing that I like definitely a lot is mirror vision, because we get so many options to change things like contrast, saturation, picture brightness, sharpness, and so on. And that is actually a little bit necessary, because out of the box, at least videos seem a little bit over sharpened. The quality on its own though is, I would say, definitely quite decent, because good white, good black. Even though the black, I have to say, is a little bit too bright, even with low amount of brightness. That is a little bit unfortunate. So if you are in darker situations and want the deep blacks, not quite so much. Colors are nice. Like I said, you can tweak all of that and you will get at least a good experience. But one thing I have to just point out is the following. As you can see on the display, it seems to run just with 54 Hz, if that is correct. And I did actually this test just to see, because whenever I scrolled, it never really felt like 60 frames to me. So just keep that in mind. I will get into that a little bit more on later, but otherwise let's check the speaker. This speaker is full on decent, because it's mostly loud enough, it sounds okay, a little bit on the thinner side, definitely not super rich or warm, but it gets the job done, but don't expect too much. The headphone jack actually though is way better, because that one I would say is actually really good. Good sound, not really any customization, but out of the box, nice, 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 nice. Okay, performance-wise, let's end all the apps, if there is an option, as we can see here on the top, and launch a few ones. And as you can see, it's decent in terms of performance. I will get a little bit more into that later on in just a few seconds, but first of all, the launch times are fine. But we are running the Helio X27, and I would have expected a little bit more from that, because like I said, maybe it's because of the 54 Hz, but this phone, even though it does almost never lag, it also never really feels super buttery smooth. It feels smooth on maybe just not 60 Hz level, because as you can see here, very lag free, very consistent, but just never really smooth. And that's the reason why I can't give it really more than a maybe acceptable or decent performance rating. If you don't care about things not being 100% smooth in terms of perceived smoothness, then you might be fine. But I really like 60 Hz buttery smooth scrolling, and this is just not what I get. Of course, with the 4 gigs of RAM, multitasking is strong, and this is fine, and it is a solid performer. Just not maybe 60 Hz. But games, I have to actually say, are surprisingly better than on something very similar, like in this price range to be expected of a Snapdragon 625. Because the normal experience, I would say, is more like a Snapdragon 430 at a 1080p display. But especially the gaming performance is actually a little bit better than the Snapdragon 625. Quite nice, solid, consistent frame rates on a higher level, You can play all the games. It doesn't really get warm, maybe because also the device is a little bit bigger and can dissipate the heat. So gaming actually really pleasant on this device. The not so pleasant thing is the battery. Because even though a charge of about 2 hours and 10 is still fine, 13% of 1 hour of YouTube is still good, it actually made me think or doubt if the battery size is the proper one. Because of course ADAS shows me something different, not what it is actually pointed out to be on spec sheets, but this is something where I does not trust, and I still don't have the tools yet to properly measure that, but at least from what I see on the battery charge time, it might be right, but no matter what, the battery life isn't all that great. What I got on mobile data is something between like 3.5 hours. On my first day I actually had still high hopes with about 4 hours, but it ended more like 3.5. On Wi-Fi you can maybe get away with maybe 5 hours or so, but not more. Standby drain though is really solid. So I was actually asking on Twitter if it's the battery that lies about its size or if it's just the inefficient SoC. It could be some of both, but nothing of that changes really what it is. Just a little bit disappointing camera. Okay, what do I think of this software? I like it, especially if you like stock Android, you will like this as well, because as you can see, stock kind of draw here with the launcher. Here also the quick settings, they are customizable. What we will see is definitely nice 7.1.1, but not really much additions, which is okay for most people, but you maybe get, for example, you can hide it in the navigation bar and then just use this one button. But as I said, it's a little bit quirky since you still have to use it for some things because, yeah, like I said, it's not the whole best solution. If you already have the space, use it for capacitive buttons. You have also some off-screen gestures, for example, double tap to wake the screen, also launch the camera and a few more things. But that's mostly it, besides, of course, things like I showed about the display. But all that doesn't matter so much. It is clean stock Android without any bloat, which is nice. Apart from that, I don't really know if this will get any further updates. So I can't really judge Ulefone at last so far. Software is decent. Software definitely does a nice job. If you like stock Android, you will get very pleased here. I personally want a few more additions, but yep, fine. Okay, let's talk about the cam. And I have to say, I'm surprised how well the front-facing camera in terms of selfies can be. As you can see, a lot of details here. Here as well. Sometimes maybe not just so perfect. Here it gets a little bit blurry, maybe because of my shaky hand, because this is not stabilized or something like that. So I have some shaky footage, but as you can see, most pictures are actually really good. And I can easily give it a really good, if not even very good, because as you can see here, mostly maintains to be very nice in terms of selfies. This is actually definitely above its price class. Yeah, absolutely surprisingly nice. Really, really nice. Also video, as you can see here, even close-up shot. But as you can also see, I had, of course, every time I do this, I have quite shaky hands, and you will see this. But it's actually not that bad, and even the quality of the microphone is solid. So actually quite a nice vlogging cam in case you want that. Now low light is definitely the weakest part. As you can see here, it falls apart. Here also very, very blurry. Everything mushes in together. So super steady hands you need, definitely, but you won't get definitely great pictures. Outside though, I have to say, I will give it an overall really good maybe. Because of one thing, even though some pictures actually look very good, colors maybe sometimes a little bit flat, you could tweak that of course, but it is the autofocus that is super slow, one of the slowest autofocuses I've seen. The good thing though is about this autofocus is that it is very reliable. So once it has the time, which is quite a long time though, it actually gets everything nicely in focus, nice and sharp as you can see here. My PC has a little bit trouble going through the pictures right now, but yeah, really good after all. Sometimes I would wish for a little bit more depth and a little bit more details in the pictures, but overall definitely for this price range still absolutely fine. Cannot complain. Now video, here is what I have to say. Doesn't look all that amazing. It looks fine, it looks decent, but the next thing you will see already is actually a little bit of a deal breaker for me. No autofocus. So you will have to use tap to focus. Of course, you also see some blurring going on or some kind of distortion on the video because it's quite wobbly because of the proper lacking stabilization. So this is why I'm not so happy. That's why I won't get more than maybe a decent in terms of video quality, because the quality on its own is good, but what is it good for without proper autofocus and without this wobbliness? So in case you want that, you will definitely maybe need a third camera app. Then you can get better results pretty much for sure. And that's why I would say let's go into the pros and cons real quick out of my head. So let's just summarize this. In terms of build and design, build definitely very good, design maybe not so much because it's quite bulky after all. Fingerprint reader is super slow, especially the screen turn on time, but it is reliable. The display I would say is really good, maybe, but at best because of the 54 Hz, if that is real, but in overall it's just not impressive. It could be a little bit better after all. The speaker is good, let's say okay. The headphone jack is better, I would say really good, and the performance, like I said, would have gotten at least a really good if not for the low refresh rate, at least that it seems like, and that's why I will give it maybe just a decent, not more. Battery life is actually disappointing in my opinion. The software is nice, clean, bloat-free, all is good. Now, camera. Front-facing, actually, I will give it easily a really good, if not maybe a very good. The low-light cam is weak. The main cam is actually really good, but not more at all, especially due to the very, very slow but reliable autofocus, and video camera is also maybe just about okay. Overall, price around about 220 euros is what it costs right now, and that is the part that makes me struggle, because 220 euros, the package doesn't seem bad, but it's also not really all that great, because you can get something like a Xiaomi Redmi Note 4 that costs about 140, so noticeably less. And you get a way better overall phone. But I know some people just say I'm sometimes too hard on a phone, and if I would, and this is just what it comes down to me, have to recommend it or not to recommend it, it would be not to recommend it, because you can just get something with better value. And like I said, it's absolutely not a bad phone, but if I already trashed something like a, yeah, let's get to that, Nokia 6 already so bad for its price, I would kind of have to do this as well, but I'm not. Okay. Yeah, this would have been it. You know what to do. Thumbs up maybe, comment, subscription, whatever you want to. But enjoy the day. Until next time. Bye. Actually didn't snap that much.